As soon as America enters this war, it becomes a world war. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, the situation, especially in Great Britain, was pretty bleak prior to the United States entering the war. German submarines were basically starving the country of Great Britain into submission. German submarines were starving the country of Great Britain into submission. Now, Alexa, my dear, how could submarines starve out a country? That's right, they're sinking every single ship coming in, and what's happening to the people of Great Britain? They're not getting any food or supplies. I'm going to give you some examples of that, okay? By the end of March 1917, German U-boats sank 660,000 tons of shipping that was either coming from or going to Great Britain. Can you imagine that? By the end of March 1917, German submarines or U-boats sank 660,000 tons of shipping that was either coming from or going to Great Britain. 660,000 tons of shipping, including what? Food, supplies, medicine, etc. That was by the end of March 1917. Early in April of 1917, that increased from 660,000 tons to 900,000 tons. In other words, the people of Britain were getting nothing into the country. So by the early part of April 1917, the total of tons of shipping that had sank, that was going into Great Britain, increased from 660,000 tons to 900,000 tons. Also, by that same time, in the beginning of April of 1917, 25% of the British fleet lie at the bottom of the ocean. German U-boats had sunk 25% of the British fleet. Now here's the real kicker. By April of 1917, Great Britain only had enough food reserves to feed its population for 3 more weeks. By April of 1917, isn't that when we declared war? By April of 1917, Great Britain only had enough food reserves to feed its population for 3 weeks. Now, we got to think about a couple of things. How do we assist these countries in Europe prior to getting our fighting men trained and ready to go over there? How do we assist them? We got to send supplies over, right? But now are we going to face the same issues? Maybe these submarines are going to be waiting. However, this was kind of interesting because American Admiral William Sims devises a plan that's going to allow American ships to take supplies over to Europe, and later the same plan will be used to take over American soldiers once they're trained. We got to get them over there, right? And how are we going to get them over there? Ship. We're not going to fly them. These isn't commercial airlines in these days. We're going to ship them. So, again, American Admiral William Sims devises a plan in May of 1917 that's going to allow us being America, to not only get that needed supplies and military equipment over to Great Britain and other allied countries, but also later, when our troops are trained, are going to allow us to get our American troops over there as well. What would they do to keep these submarines from taking the same action they had been doing? You send one ship over at a time, what happens? Send a convoy. He said we will start sending American ships to Great Britain in convoys, several at a time. And not only are they going to have these American vessels travel in convoys, they're going to be guarded with American destroyers. You know what they are? Big battleships. And they're going to be equipped with submarine warfare. Okay? So this is what Admiral William Sims did. He said, we're going to send the supplies and the military supplies and the food and all this over to Great Britain, France, and Russia. But we're going to travel these American vessels in convoys, several at a time. And we are going to protect these convoys with American battleship destroyers that are all equipped with anti-submarine warfare. Well, yeah, battleships or destroyers or warships, yeah. Ships of battle, battleships, destroyers. Okay? Well, by July of 1917, the United States had sent 34 American battleship destroyers to Great Britain to assist the British. So not only were they using these to convoy supplies over, they also used them to assist Great Britain in the fight against Germany. So this needed food supply and war materials were now making it to the Allies, right? And later, what are we going to send on those ships when they're prepared? American troops. Just a little statistic. During the time that the United States of America began to send American troops over there on ships, you know how many soldiers were lost using Sims's convoy system? 0. Not a soldier lost. So we first send supplies and food, military equipment, and later we are going to send soldiers. And because of Admiral Sims's convoy strategy, not one American soldier that was shipped to Europe to fight the war was lost at sea. Not one. Good strategy, huh? Now, backing up a little bit, in April of 1917, after the United States declared war on Germany, President Wilson had to choose an overall commander to lead American forces in World War I. And the man that he chose was General John J. Blackjack Pershing. So after declaring war on Germany in April of 1917, President Woodrow Wilson needs to choose an overall commander of American forces that will fight in World War I, and he chooses famous General John J. nickname Blackjack Pershing. John J. Blackjack Pershing. He's the man that's going to lead American forces in World War I, and his troops become known as the American Expeditionary Force. His troops become known as the American Expeditionary Force. Now it's kind of interesting because what are European leaders in Europe wanting, Andrew? What do they want right now? Because they are about out. They want American fighting in there immediately. They were very, very frustrated with General Pershing because General Pershing insisted that his troops would go through proper training before he shipped them off to fight. He did not want to send green recruits in this war because he knew what was going to happen if he did. This would be a war like none other for reasons that we talked about. So even though we declared war in April of 1917, the first troops did not arrive in Europe until March of 1918, 11 months later. So even though we declared war in April of 1917, American troops did not hit the ground in Europe until March of 1918. What did we supply during that 11 months? Food and military supplies, hoping again that the Allies could hang on until American soldiers arrived. And like I mentioned, European leaders were very frustrated with General Pershing. They wanted immediate relief. Okay, that'll take us to our next subtopic, which is President Wilson's 14 points. Anybody heard of that before? President Wilson's 14 points? But you might get a little of that world history. What's President Wilson's 14 points? as what? That next one? Great. This will help you a little bit with what we're talking about, although, to be honest with you, the lecture is not going to go into this much detail. Okay, now, we got to move back again. On January 8th of 1918, now Porter, had we sent any troops, American troops to Europe yet on January 8th, 1918? No, they don't go to March. So prior to us even sending any troops to Europe on January 8th of 1918, President Woodrow Wilson gave a speech to Congress. So again, on January 8th of 1918, prior to American troops reaching Europe, President Woodrow Wilson gives a speech to Congress. And his speech basically outlined, a plan for world peace. His speech outlined a plan for world peace. He was concerned about this war going on in Europe and the one we had committed to and were training troops for. And he made a statement about the country of Germany. He made a statement about the country of Germany. And his statement made the headlines of the New York Times because he said, quote, about Germany, he said, quote, she may be equal, but not a master. So during his speech to Congress, he states about Germany, she may be equal, meaning equal to who? The U.S., but is not a master. If you look at the headlines of the New York Times that I handed out, it says, President specifies terms as basis for world peace, asks justice for Alsace-Lorraine, applauds Russia, tells Germany she may be equal, but not a master. Okay? Wait for the next thing. Well, President Wilson's plan for world peace became known in history as the 14 points. And as you look at those, I'm going to kind of break them down a little bit, less specific than when you see. I want you to just briefly read through points 1 through 5. Briefly read through points 1 through 5. And tell me if this statement is true or false once you read through those. Kind of briefly read through points 1 through 5. What are the two things that he's really concentrating on there? Mackenzie, what do you think one thing of those 5 that kind of sticks out to you? Freedom of the seas for all nations. So basically points 1 through 5 call for 2 important things. Freedom of the seas for all nations, right? And he's talking about in peace and war. So during war we still have freedom of the seas. During peace we still have freedom of the seas. So you can circle that or write it down or whatever. What else might he be doing, Emily? What else is he kind of emphasizing that bothers him in points 1 through 5? What doesn't he like? What got us in this mess? Go ahead, Brian. No? What got us in this mess? What's another name for an alliance? An armament. So when he says reduction of armaments, what he means is I'm tired of secret treaties between nations. Didn't these alliances get us in this problem in the first place? So really the emphasis of points 1 through 5 are freedom of the seas for all nations in peace and war, and let's end these secret treaties between nations. Let's end these alliances, because all they're doing is getting us in big trouble. Now if you read briefly 6 through 13, just kind of read through those briefly, and they're going to find out the one thing that he's emphasizing in points 6 through 13. What's he really talking about? One simple thing in points 6 through 13. So just take a kind of a second to peruse those and try to get in your mind what he might be emphasizing in points 6 through 13. What's he talking about there? He's talking about the evacuation of all Russian territory, the evacuation and restoration of Belgium, the evacuation of French territory, restoration of Alsace-Lorraine, the readjustment of Italy's frontiers along lines of nationality, development for the people of Austria-Hungary, independence from Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, relinquishment of Turkish control over non-Turkish populations, erection of an independent Polish state with free and secure cross. What's he talking about there? Anybody? After World War I. Very good. What he's emphasized in points 6 through 13 is what our plan needs to be after this war ends. You have to have a restructuring of Europe, just like you did after World War II. Yes?
I thought it meant the government.
That's what he's saying. He wants Austria and Hungary to have their own separate governments.
Oh.
Yeah. But he's looking for restructuring of Europe after World War I. And he's talking about this 2 months before we even send troops there. He's thinking ahead. And point 14, it's pretty easy to figure out what he's saying there. What's he looking for in point 14? What's he want? Anybody want to throw that out? What's he want with point 14? He wants a League of Nations so we don't get ourselves in this business again. So we can sit at the table. What is it kind of called now? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he wanted a League of Nations that, geez, can we sit down and solve our problems before we end up in this mess that we're in now? That's his point. And the 14 points are something he's going to fight for the rest of his presidency, and we'll tell you later whether they come about or not. Okay? But keep in mind that he emphasizes these 14 points 2 months before we even send troops in to fight. He's thinking ahead, which will take us to our next subtopic, which is what? World War I on the Western Front. Where would that be? Where are we fighting on the Western Front? No, that's the Eastern Front. France. Okay. So World War I on the Western Front. Okay, Sully, you are Germany. And you have found out that the United States of America has officially declared war on you. And they are in the process of sending troops and have already sent supplies. They're sending troops, they're training them, they're not here yet. What has your strategy changed to when you get this word? Okay, but I'm going to reword this. So you get the word that the United States has declared war. What they're doing now is shipping supplies, military supplies, and food. Troops are still training. Not here yet. What's your goal? No, they're going to get here. No, they're already going to. They're getting here. Very successful. So, all right. I want to win the state championship in soccer, and I got to beat Warland to do it. I'm in a war with them. And their best players are Mako, Victorin, Edholm, whomever. So we're going to play them in the state championship, and those guys are hurt, but they're recovering, man. They are working hard. So I want to play them for the state championship before these guys get back, because I get a better chance to win if they're not playing, right? So what's the strategy of Germany? Win in Europe before those injured soccer players get there. In this case, who are the injured soccer players? American troops. Okay, think about that. So the goal that Germany has is we must win this war in Europe before the United States gets their troops here. If we can get these guys to surrender in battle prior to American troops, it will not matter. Wouldn't that be your strategy? Here come the Americans. Let's win before they get here. So, in 1918, there are two very important battles fought in France before American troops arrive. One is the Battle of the Somme River on March 21st, 1918, and the other is the Battle of the Lys River on April 9th, 1918. I will repeat these several times. So, the German goal is to try to win the war in Europe before the United States could send troops. They're concentrating on the Western Front. On March 21st of 1918, Allies and Central Powers, mainly Germany, fights against France, Great Britain, and Russia at the Battle of the Somme River. Less than a month later, just a couple of weeks later, on April 9th, 1918, there's another major battle in France before American troops arrive, the Battle of the Lies River. What's the goal for the Allies in these two battles? Not win, but even, another word for holding them off, tie, stalemate them, don't lose. Okay, don't lose. Okay, soccer games can't end in a tie, right? You just shoot out forever, right? Isn't that what you do? Can you tie for the state championship in the 50 free? You could you not? Okay, so if somebody's swimming against Elise and she's good when she is, that person thinks, if I can tie Elise, man, that'd be awesome because I don't lose. Okay? And that's exactly what the French and the Allies did at these two battles, as they fought to a stalemate, which is really a victory because this is going to give extra time for what, Peyton? American troops to get over there.
Wait, so who's fighting for the...
Well, mainly it's France against Germany.
Okay, so France.
But the Allies actually were fighting against the Central Powers, which was, you know, you've got sides here. So the Allies are fighting the Central Powers in France before American troops arrived. March 21st, 1918, they fight at the Battle of the Somme River. April 9th, 1918, they fight at the